Mr. Chairman, this is Teresa Haley. Staff is ready to begin the meeting when you are.
All right. Thank you, Teresa. Welcome to the Town of Hilton Head Island Design Review Board meeting for Tuesday, June 8th, 2021. It is now called to order. Are we in compliance with the Freedom of Information Act?
Yes, sir, we are.
Wonderful. Thank you. Teresa, would you please call roll?
Yes, sir. Ms. Lippert?
Here.
Mr. McAllister?
Here.
Ms. Remke?
Here.
Mr. Molesky?
Here.
Mr. Karstens?
Here.
Ms. Voss?
Here.
Mr. Gentleman?
Here. All right, we got everybody today. Approval of the agenda. Does staff have any changes to the agenda?
No, sir, not at this time.
All right, thank you, Chris. May I have a motion to approve the agenda for today?
I'll make a
Who wants
motion
to-
to approve the agenda as submitted.
Thank you, Mr. McAllister. We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second from Ms. Voss. So board members, if you have any changes to the agenda, please state them when called upon by Teresa. Otherwise, please vote yes or no when called upon. All right, Teresa, all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Lippert?
Yes.
Mr. McAllister?
Yes.
Ms. Remke?
Yes.
Mr. Molesky?
Yes.
Mr. Karstens?
Yes.
Ms. Voss?
Yes.
Mr. Gentleman?
Yes, so agenda passes unanimously. Next, we will go on to approval of the minutes for the meeting of May 25th, 2021. Again, board members, if there are any changes to the minutes, please state them when called upon by Teresa. Otherwise, please vote yes or no. Teresa, please call roll.
Mr. Chairman, if we could have a motion in a second.
I did that again, didn't I? I think I did that last time. I tell you what, we can't vote without a motion, so let's see if we can get a motion out of this crowd. Anyone?
I'll make the motion to approve the agenda or the minutes of May 25, 2021.
Thank you, Ms. Voss. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second from Mr. McAllister. All right, Tracy, would you like to do it now? How about a roll now?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right,
Ms.
thanks.
Lippert?
Yes.
Mr. McAllister?
Yes.
Ms. Remke?
Yes.
Mr. Molesky?
Yes.
Mr. Karstens?
Yes.
Ms. Voss?
Yes.
Mr. Gentleman?
Yes, so minutes pass unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to citizen comments. Teresa, were there any citizen comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Public comments concerning agenda items were to be submitted electronically via the Open Town Hall portal. The public comment period closed at 4:30 yesterday, and there were no comments of record. In addition to commenting on the portal, citizens could call into the meeting to give comments. However, there are no citizens signed up to give comments during today's meeting.
All right, thank you, Teresa. All right, moving on to new business. New development conceptual, tidal wave auto spa DRB 001157-2021. Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The site is outlined in red on the screen. Running diagonally on the top of the screen is Highway 278. You can see Matthews on the left-hand side. Of interest, McDonald's directly to the left of the site on your screen here that was last before you at the last DRB meeting for renovations. It's the oil change facility here. the old Sam's Club location. You can see that the end of that building at the bottom of your screen here where the cursor is. I would also point out that the entrance to the, I believe it's a Circle K gas station, the new one that was recently built, is right here. And you can see the site for the Parker's gas station here. Again, that was recently before you for approval. Does everybody know where we are? And if not, please wave your hand. Seeing none. This applicant is to demo the existing old Pizza Hut building along with the existing open bay car wash and develop a tidal wave auto spa. The existing conditions have an impervious coverage of 63%. The redevelopment will have an impervious coverage of 57%. The site plan preserves all existing specimen and significant trees, except for a significant 30-inch loblolly pine in the middle of the site. Tidal Wave seeks to provide their customer with an upscale experience with multiple landscape features. There will be a planted landscape buffer along Plaza Drive to frame the building and screen the vacuum service area where people vacuum and clean the insides of their car after it has been through the wash. All the vacuum equipment on site will be housed in screened structures that will match the building architecture and materials of the primary building. These structures are fully enclosed, preventing any obtrusive sounds from the vacuum equipment. Landscaping will be added to screen site components like the dumpster. Staff suggests the site plan should be mirrored so that the main building does not crowd Plaza Drive, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. For this reason, staff recommends denial. So it's critical to point out the when you turn off a 278, this is where you would come in and circle around on Plaza Drive here. The proposed site of that building sits right in here, so you'd be looking right down the exit to the car wash, as well as that building crowding this right-of-way here, where the other buildings, McDonald's and the oil change facility, are set back off the road. So it's important to note that on this plan. And we'll talk some more about that as we go on through, but looking at the surrounding architecture, the old Sam's Club building. This is the oil change facility. The McDonald's across Plaza Drive. And while this was not in your packet, the applicant asked that it be included in the presentation. It's just a colored rendering of the site plan to help illustrate the building, the development plan. Again, you'll come in off of 278 right here. So when you turn in, you'll be looking down. This is the car wash tunnel. So you'll be looking down the car wash tunnel. And you can see how tight this building is to the right-of-way. Of additional concern is this wall, and we'll look at the architectural elevations in a minute, but this wall of the building is glass, and staff is concerned that, as with any car wash, there's going to be lots of lights and different colored lights that reflect off the suds, and don't know that that's the best elevation to put so close to the road. It's also important to note that these are canopies, and these canopies, up in the canopies house, it's staff's understanding, the vacuum hose and equipment. So this stuff comes down so that people can park in here and vacuum out their car under cover. A footprint or a building plan for the main car wash building. Again, this is the side that would be on Plaza Drive. You can see the windows here and the main building or the office over here. Elevations of that proposed building. Again, this is the elevation interior to the site. This is the elevation that you would see if you were standing on Plaza Drive. Again, note the windows. And the end elevation from Sam's, as well as looking at it from Highway 278, that end elevation. An illustration of those, colored rendering. There are a couple of canopies around the site. The back canopy, there's a pay canopy, and then there's a prep canopy as you come around. We can look at that, the location of those canopies on the site. Staff is concerned because they're relatively close to the vacuum canopies that you see here. And this is that vacuum building where the equipment will be housed in sections, wall sections. Again, illustrations of the building and what it's going to look like. Again, the Plaza Drive side. This is the interior site. And then the end of the building. So you can see the canopy, the pavement canopies here as they arch out over, and they're relative how close they are to this building. This is the vacuum canopy. And then the prep canopy is right here, which is, again, is cantilevered out over the drive. So this is the demolition plan. Again, the old Pizza Hut building is here. Plaza Drive is here. And you can see the open bay car wash here. This is the pine that will be removed. Proposed site plan. The only specimen tree, I believe, is this one. The others identified are significant, but the only specimen is this one. Again, the pavement canopy is right here with that vacuum enclosure, and the prep canopy is here with the main building here. This is proposed landscape plan. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Chris, keep that plan up for a second. Let me ask you a question before we move on.
Yes, sir.
Please. If they were to mirror the building from left to right, wouldn't that really hurt the egress and ingress? Wouldn't that put that right on that entry and exit out to 278? You might be able to see it better on a non-landscape plan. So it seems like that driveway would then be, you just literally mirror that. That now puts that right on that corner.
Staff feels confident that it could be mirrored, that the site plan could be mirrored, and this entrance could be maintained with an exit coming out of the car wash, taking a left, and then exiting the property. That's a distinct possibility.
Okay, so they would.
So you'd have to, you'd come out and you turn left to get out of the property, or you turn left and then circle back around to come into one of these vacuum bays.
So there wouldn't be two curb cuts then?
It could be only one curb cut, yes, sir.
Okay, all right, thank you. Is the applicant present? If you are, please identify yourself.
Mr. Chairman, this is Chester Williams. I'm local counsel for the applicant. Brian, it looks like you're talking, but we can't hear anything.
And can we find out if Brian is on oh, there's Brian. Brian, can you hear us? Brian Brown, is it Brown or Braun? I
We
didn't.
Brian,
can't hear you, Brian.
Brian, I think you're muted on your end. Brian, I think you're muted on your end. You're not muted on this end. We still can't hear you. Brian, this is Chris Darnell with the town of Hilton Head. You can call into the meeting. That might.
Can you hear me now?
Solution.
There you go.
Yeah, there you
Yeah,
go.
sorry, I changed the settings. Somehow they got switched on me. So, but yes, sir, I am with EMC Engineering, who represents the civil engineering. Then obviously Marty Murphy represents Tidal Wave Auto Spa. He's on as well.
All right.
Yes, I'm on. This is Marty Murphy with Tidal Wave Auto Spa. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
So we got the three of you. You all have 10 minutes to add to Chris's narrative, if you like.
Yes, sir. This is Marty Murphy with Tidal Wave. So appreciate Chris giving that representation of Tidal Wave. And we've worked with Chris already now through a couple of submittals of the DRB to accommodate some opportunities that Chris wanted us to look at revising our building and the facade and different components to make this representation be what the city of Hilton Head would allow for us to do. So in discussion of that, there has been discussion of mirroring the site. And while, we kind of see what the staff is recommending, the purpose, there's two purposes here for the location of the building in reference to Plaza Drive. The first reason is being that we spend a lot of time in creating the actual elements of the building, the design of the building. We putting awnings on it, changing the facade. If we mirror the building at this point in time, we've done all those architectural features to simply screen it with vacuum canopies, just these large structures that are utilized for our customers to vacuum. So the elements that we went into detail to try to create, I won't say it would be for no purpose, but I mean, it is screened entirely at that time. We're putting the elements that was recommended against the opposite orientation of the property, which would be against the storm drain ditch and some other landscape features that would completely block this view. Another reason that we particularly oriented this building this way is it's a beautiful feature. This building is a beautiful building. I understand the staff's concerns about the light, but our lights are not strobe lights. They're simply, there is a few color lights throughout the tunnel, but they simply come on as you're going through. It's not flashing lights or anything. And add to the lighting, rarely are we open after dark. 8 to 8 is our hours of operation. We're not open after dark. I know during the winter months, there'll be a short time frame there that you would be able to see these lights at night, and I think that was a concern of the staff. The main concern that we have is we'd like for the citizens in the community to be able to see this beautiful architectural building and not be looking through vacuum canopies at which our customers are allowed to use at their convenience. And sometimes that visual image, if you've ever been by, or be at your home or been by somewhere using a shop vac or vacuums at other locations, those images sometimes are not what we want to be represented as the tidal wave model, nor would I think that the citizens of Hilton Head would like to see that. I think they would prefer to see the architectural features of this beautiful building and the opportunity that we're given there. And as far as the prep canopy and the pay station canopies, we've talked to Mr. Chris about that as well. We can change those canopies to be truly like 4-column canopies, similar to our vacuum canopies themselves. I think his concern was they just didn't like the appearance of the cantilever. We can certainly change those. We used to do the more substantial structure in the past, and we went to this just because it was kind of the trend or the norm, as you see like Chick-fil-A and McDonald's and all use those cantilevered arch canopies to protect their menu boards. We use this to protect our pay stations. With that being said, that's kind of addressing some issues. I'd like to take this time to thank this board and Chris for this opportunity, and we hope that through today we can get these items resolved and move forward. Mr. Chad, if you have anything you'd like to add, or Brian, I am done with that at that time.
Yeah, I have nothing to add at this time, Marty.
Okay.
I would only add on to Marty that, some of the important features of complying with the town's code of, the significant trees, protecting those, protecting the overall look of the property and the environment. And this property does have quite a few utilities on it, along with the way the drainage flows. We looked at all of those components when laying out the site plan. If you mirror this, then you're going to end up with two very large vacuum canopies up against the access road, which is actually more roof line than the building. So you end up with more on that side. So I would pay attention to that as well. But we did look at all the environment, your utilities, your drainage, saving as many trees, providing the most canopies, and keeping this, environmentally friendly as possible, also along with the traffic flow.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. We're going to go through the board members here, so everybody hang tight with us. There may be some questions for you. All great argument, all great counterpoints, by the way. I think personally, most of which I think I agree with all the counterpoint arguments. So, but we're going to go through the board, and I usually go last. So let's start with Ms. Lippert.
Thank you. I first have two questions to Chris. One being, I just couldn't quite tell on the drawings, the pay canopy, is that within the building setback line on the planned southern side of the site? I mean, maybe that should be a question to the applicant, but I couldn't quite tell whether the actual supporting element was crossing. And I'll just kind of throw out my second question too, is I'm assuming it's the strip line of the specimen tree that's preventing just letting a whole project shift, let's say 10 feet plan east. I'm just trying to understand some of the constraints a little bit better.
Marty, you want me to take that, or?
Yes, Brian, if you could take that, because I'm traveling down the road trying to look at this as well. And
Sure.
Lippert, I'll ask you the question as far as the XPT canopies or the pay station. It looks like, and Brian, if you clarify this, it's possible that it is possibly sitting in that, but I think there's room there to shift that over. That's what's required.
So yes, currently the pay kiosk, the southern one, is encroaching into the 20-foot building setback. So,
okay.
To answer that question. The second question is, yes, we are trying to protect those significant trees that are there as much as possible, and just trying to keep as much natural vegetation on that side as possible to protect those. There's also quite a few drainage, sewer easements, utility easements that run through this property and along, so we've put all that into effect, and the property does drain towards the right of the page to the east.
Okay, thank you.
So
that helps me understand some of the constraints a little bit better.
Annette, this is Chris Darnell at the town of Hilton Head. Staff does not think that flipping the site plan will any further encroach in those significant and specimen trees on the right-hand side.
Thank you. I can definitely see in the elevations, and I'm going to I'll spend most of my time on sheet PR.3, but I will start with just a couple of items in your responses to the pre-app comments. Specifically, items 5, 6, and 7, just as far as you'll hear me coming back to some of that as far as roof overhang dimensions, stone veneer replacement, and having proportions of the facade and facade elements that create a unified overall design. So on PR.3, thank you, Chris, for moving to that page. Like I said, I see the effort in breaking up the facade. To me, a lot of different sort of architectural languages have been brought into this facade, and I'm not sure that it's really helping you. I think a greater study of proportions will help, and eliminating some of the variety of what's going on. So I'll give you a couple of specific examples. While at Conceptual, we tend to try to give you a little bit more general, and because you're going to tweak your design and bring it back for final. Looking at the east elevation, for instance, I would recommend that the Bahama shutters perhaps come down a little bit, come at a shallower angle, and just have it be a stucco sort of plane instead of having a faux shutter covered by a Bahama shutter. And I think that does the trick as far as sort of that facade element. I also don't know that the glazing in the gable is really sort of a low country vernacular or break up that facade. I think, again, a stucco trim around sort of where a window would be. Stucco trim on the corners perhaps, because I think a lot of the facades could be helped by stucco trim. I think would go a long way. Again, when I'm talking about proportions, maybe just studying the piers to the glazing right now, they all feel like it's a complete A rhythm, for like 3 A's of a window and then an A here, and studying those proportions a little bit more. Really looking at head heights of glazing. Right now I'm seeing door heights and then the faux window heights and then the storefront heights. So there's bringing some consistency in through that, I think will go a long way. On the west elevation, while the elevation may let it seem like that's helping break down the flatness and the length of that, because it is in fact in the same plane, I'm not sure that it's gotten you where it's really helping break down that facade. And again, it's some of those elements, like I don't know if the gable is helping you. One of the things, and this is a little bit on the east and west facade, I guess I'm not quite understanding, there's that open bay just past where the operator is. Is that, like, what happens after hours? Where does this building kind of close down? Can you explain that a little bit? Brian or Marty?
Ms. Libet, I think I couldn't quite hear. It's breaking up really bad. So could you repeat that question you asked?
So I'm seeing a sort of an open bay just behind the operator office. And I'm trying to understand, you know, what's happening in that open bay and what happens after hours. How does this building close? Roll down doors that comes down these two bays, or how is the wash line closed off during non-operating?
Ma'am, that's a good question. So it is open bays that are, with the columns that are wrapped in the same facade elements as the rest of the tunnel. That area is what we call our loading station or additional prep area. The tunnel is closed off at night with roll-up doors that roll up inside the tunnel. So we close those upon closing of operational hours that secure the building. That open area remains open. That's simply just a covered, an additional prep area for the cars before they actually go through the tunnel. The operator's station that you see is where the attendant or the site leader, that is where the computer equipment is. That's where he can do any of his business as far as handling if we selling club plans or any information that is needed for the site is housed in that operational booth. That is simply a computer housed area, is not to be a actually occupied space.
Okay. That helps me understand the south elevation more. I didn't quite read that roll-up door was actually inset, let's say, whatever, I'm guessing here, 25 feet or something. So that is an open sort of archway that remains open all the time at the south elevation?
Ma'am, that is correct.
I see. Okay, that helps me with understand the reading a lot more. And yet on that south elevation, I think, again, we have a lot of different architectural languages. And I'm not seeing a whole lot of low country vernacular in this. I don't know that the composition of all these various elements of some archways with a voussoir, some arched windows, the glazing in the gable, the very short roof overhangs. I just don't, the water table line that jumps up. I also couldn't quite tell on some of the notes. I saw one note that talked about a smooth split face. The split face, I also don't think of as a low country. I was trying to sort of find a relatively recently built project with split face brick on the island that was approved under the LMO, and nothing came to mind. I'm sure Chris could probably correct me on this. So I think, to me, in general, you have not yet hit the mark for a low country sort of vernacular. And I think there's a certain restraint that needs to come back as far as limiting the number of elements on the facades, and yet also pushing the envelope a little bit more strongly into the low country, like I think the roof overhangs. And I may not be understanding the site constraints. I think that will help a lot with the proportions of the building, because as soon as those overhangs come down, those roof line, the eave lines drop a little bit, and that will go a long way. Let me just kind of flip through some of the other pages. I'm sure you've been made aware that we'll need on your color board submitted what those fabric canopies are. Anything that's like at the pay canopy where it says pay here, that falls under signage and a separate submittal. We'll need more clarification on colors of like the dumpster enclosure, the gates. I may have missed it. Same with the vacuum vending enclosure. I think larger overhangs will go along. I couldn't quite understand the vending machine that's sort of sticking out of the building. Could you explain that? I'm on PR.5.
So vending is actually, it's a machine that's actually recessed inside of our vacuum housing or our vacuum enclosure. As that building that you see is just a machine that sits inside. It's just a vending machine that houses air fresheners, some little towelettes, items such as that. That's kind of a complimentary for our customers to have that usage. I would like to speak to the veneers and all. And I know with Chris, we've gone through the veneers and we've put, time into trying to create that facade that is appropriate for this low country area. As far as the split face block and all, and the water table, all those are items that we can work through with staff. Since we have the comments here, that is items that we can certainly work through. I think staff will attest to that we have accommodated most of the concerns that has been brought to us as far as landscaping, the facade, because when we first came in, we had stacked stone and those items of features on the building, and staff says, hey, we'd prefer to use these buildings here for a building of influence, so we've done that. And I don't know if y'all are familiar, if you've ever looked on the internet, there's our building in Beaufort, South Carolina is a good reference of, what a low country design would be appropriate for here as well. But to speak to your concerns about the elements, we certainly are willing to work through these.
I certainly appreciate that, and I'm sure the whole board will. Just trying to kind of go through whether I had any other comments. Yeah, I mean, I think some of on PR.1, my instinct would be to have the doors match the stucco color if it stays stucco. I know staff had recommended that the stucco become a hardy panel and trim. I'm okay with the stucco as long as it does get some trim elements to help detail it, score lines, and things like that. And just being aware of, like the toilet room is going to need signage. What is that really going to look like? The electric room is going to have signage. These facades are quickly going to start getting a lot busier than what's being represented right now. I'm not seeing downspouts on, even though they gutters called out.
We have gutters and downspouts, and I would like to speak about the overhang of the eaves. And as you're probably very aware of, the more overhang we have, it creates a negative toward our building setbacks. So we have to be careful as to not, if we're using this in our vacuum structure, in our actual, building itself of operations and our canopies and all, we're greatly reducing our buildable space because of building setbacks. Again, this is, I'll refer to Beaufort, South Carolina. Very similar discussions that we're having now. Those elements of features were worked through at that particular location.
And I hear you and I appreciate that, but for my responsibility is to get a low country vernacular and island character to be part of the project, and the larger overhangs are one of the essential features. But again, just saying also the downspouts should please appear on the final drawing. Roof plan should please appear. And now that I understand just how open that entry area element is there, we would need to know of what will be visible, because I'm presuming it says it's a water FRP panel. So while we typically don't look at any of the interior materials, this one's so highly visible it is during final DRB. Let me just see if there was anything else that covers my notes. So thank you very much.
Annette.
I know this refers back to the in doing all these features, again, I'm going to refer back to, if we mirror the building, we're doing a lot of these architectural elements only to be screened by the wood line that's to the, I believe it's the east of our property. If we're looking at the screen, it'd be to the right. So I want to keep that in mind as well, because if we mirror this site, the elements you're going to see is those canopies that are excessively longer than our building, and you will see the customers vacuuming their cars, which all these elements that we're putting focus on in this wonderful building that we're trying to create here will be screened or shadowed by that viewing.
Annette, did you address one way or the other the flipping question? Would you offer an opinion on that, please?
Well, inevitably with my lead-in question, I had hoped we could just push it on the site, but I understand why we cannot. I think the main building facade has a long way to go. Do I feel like fundamentally it can't be on that street facade? I would be okay with it on that street facade, but I do think that facade needs a good bit of work on it to get it into low country proportions and vernacular.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Annette. Let's move on to Mr. Molesky.
Okay. So I'll have to say, originally when we got started with this, listening to staff, I kind of was on board with the whole flip it thing. But then after hearing, I think Mr. Murphy's explanation, I've become more comfortable with working with it the way that it is, especially looking at the renderings that you provide. I think help a lot. To continue with that, because one of my questions was, what are your hours of operations? And you were answering the questions as I was jotting down my notes. So that was helpful. The lighting, can you elaborate on that? Because I've gone in, I guess, some of your competitors, and maybe I'm just getting too old, but it's almost disorienting with all the different flashing color lights as I drive through there. Is like, what's the purpose of that? Is that just a good marketing attention thing? So when people are driving by or at McDonald's, it catches their eyes, or like how important is that?
Sir, it's just part of, we have over 70 of these open. This is just part of our, I don't want to say marketing, but it gives the appearance that, we're applying the hot wax, and it's just a feature that makes it a little more, I don't know, pleasurable of a ride instead of just going through a dark tunnel. That's a lot of the reason we have a lot of the glass on the side, is to give that open, natural lighting coming through. And we don't truly have a lot of off-colored lights in our tunnel. I think we have one location that may have a red toned light. Other than that, you will see our logo as you're going through our tunnel will be projected across your windshield as you're going through. Other than that, I don't think we have any colored lights. We don't do all the flashing strobe lights as you're coming through. So, and I'll be glad to provide you, if it helps, I can provide later on basically a video of showing what goes through this tunnel.
Well, I know this isn't a focus group for that, but I'm definitely not one who cares for all that, and I can understand that being a concern of staff and both others. So in that vein, if we take a look at the west side elevation, and this will kind of play off of perhaps some of Annette's comments. So right more or less smack in the middle where we have the gabled portion of it there that seems to be in the same plane as the entire building. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, the middle one there, I guess, the west elevation right there. Perhaps there's an opportunity to take that section where the gabled roof exists, and I'm looking at, we'll call it 3 window assemblies there in the center. Perhaps have that middle section there make up a number 18 inches proud if your setbacks will allow, just to kind of break up that elevation a little bit. And then right where you show those Bahama shutters there, again, in keeping with Annette's comment on the east side, maybe go ahead and lower those down. Then that way it'll kind of break up the elevation. And then it also will provide a little bit of a visual buffer for those of us on the outside to maybe block some of the lights, because maybe as you enter, maybe those windows there don't have the light thing going on. Maybe it's more or less in the middle, and that might be a compromise perhaps. I don't know how the other members or staff are viewing things now, but maybe by bringing down those Bahama shutters in the center section might, again, help with the elevation, break things up a little bit, and also diffuse some of the light would be one suggestion that I would ask you guys to consider. I definitely can appreciate the having all the windows there, because at first I had a comment like, is there another material? Does it even need to be windows? But I could kind of appreciate the interest that could provide. So I'll just I'll go along with what you're sharing there. I agree with Annette. I don't quite understand the arches there shown on the north and south elevation. With everything else kind of just being linear or gabled. But I'm not an architect, but maybe there's a reasoning for that. But I could see those just being squared off to stay consistent. I'll agree on with Annette on the east elevation there with those 4 windows and the shutters, just to go ahead and lower those, and almost in keeping with my suggestion on the west elevation to bring those down to a different angle, lower angle. I do like the glazing in the gables, and it looks like that's not just a faux glazing. That roof pitch appears continues through the structure then to let in light. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct. We try to allow as much natural lighting as we can.
Okay, I mean, I kind of find that interesting and kind of more of a 70s modern kind of way with the lower roof and all that kind of stuff. I would like to see the overhangs extended, something more than 12 inches. I appreciate your comment with the setbacks, but briefly looking at the site plans, it appears that you could extend those overhangs without necessarily encroaching on the setbacks. Again, we could take a closer look at that, and perhaps only the west side elevation, perhaps, I don't know if those overhangs there are the only ones that would be kind of running along the setbacks. But it might as well just go ahead and address this. All right, so no, where am I? I'm all disoriented. There you are there. I can see the hand moving around. So that part there where all the windows are that's looking out onto whatever that Plaza Drive is, that's where the building is right up against the setbacks. And if you were to extend those overhangs by an additional 12 inches, that's where you're saying that they would be extending beyond the setback?
Yes, sir, that is correct. And then it would start
And you
drive
couldn't
aisle.
shift the whole project 12 inches in the other direction then, because then it gets too close to the canopy of the trees?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
All right, and then, again, I'm not on the permitting thing here, and I don't know what the posture would be on requesting any kind of variance for those overhangs, but I agree with Annette. I would like to see the overhangs be something more, and I believe that should be the only area where it might interfere with your setbacks, because it appears that all the other parts of the structure are all still well within the boundaries, perhaps. And then, again, just to kind of give some credence to what Annette was saying with the whole low country appeal, perhaps instead of the split face brick, perhaps some type of tabby look along the foundation. Water table perhaps might be more in keeping, and then to maybe pick on the east elevation where that bump out is and those 4 windows, maybe have that portion right there that projects out. Maybe that's above the water table there is done in board and batten or lap siding or something that's kind of a, more of that low country look might be a good way to, give it some more of that low country flavor, if you will, without necessarily compromising the look of the building. Because overall, I mean, I kind of like how it looks. I think it's got a good start. It just needs a little bit of tweaking here and there. I think that's all I have to offer right now. Thank you for listening.
Yes, sir. And that again, I'll say this: those are all items that I think is easily fixed. The overhang, working with staff, I think we can fix those. The split face block or brick, whatever, those are items that we are willing to work with staff on to address these concerns. Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, John. Ms. Foss.
Okay. Can the client please comment on what the prep area is? Are they scrubbing down the wheels and the back bumper? Or you mentioned they might be like buying some yearly passes. Can you tell me what happens in that area?
Yes, ma'am. So the prep area, we have a prep canopy prior to you getting to the main structure where they use some, the love bugs are out. They use general soap for that to apply, and they scrub the front of your car, the passenger side of the windshield. You have a truck or an SUV that the back shape, they help prep that. Then you pull on into the open area that is of discussion. That is where we load you on the correlator. That is an open air area. You're loaded, and they finish the final prep of the driver's side of the windshield. And at that time, that's where the attendant telling you put your car in neutral, foot off the brake. Thank you for deciding to choose to wash your car with us. Hope you have a great day. And then you're allowed to go through the tunnel. The operator's booth that is there, that's simply the computers that if they have trouble with the car wash or they run reports or wanted to buy a fast pass, the printer is actually housed in this operator's booth where they can apply that fast pass to your windshield. And that is a reader that we have, a fast pass reader. The XPT, the pay stations you pull up, it recognizes that you are a club member. It allows you to pass through the gate. You don't do any paying at that time at the gate. It speeds up the process of getting through the pay station and to our tunnel quicker to allow you more time to do the other activities throughout your day. This is the model that's worked for us, and it's our customers love it. They are always giving us positive feedback on this opportunity.
Thank you. I kind of agree that I don't really want to, if we flipped this whole thing, I really wouldn't want to be watching the people vacuuming their cars. And I was asking that question so I know how much activity is right there beside Plaza Drive. It sounds like it's going to call attention no matter what, but there's less going on than I thought. How many people get out of their cars and watch the car go through the tunnel instead of the whole family sitting in the car?
No one's allowed out of their car until they pull around to the vacuum canopy. That time you're allowed to get out and vacuum your car.
So you get out of your car in the vacuum canopy, and that's where you can go and use the vending machine to buy the air fresheners, etc.
Yes, ma'am, that is correct.
And
can't access the vacuuming until you've gone through the tunnel.
All right. And who's policing that?
You have 3 to 4 attendants on time at all times, and typically there's one attendant that is policing the parking lot to make sure that the customers are getting the best treatment they can and providing the cleanest facility, maintaining our facility as far as keeping up any trash that our customers would allow to escape from their presence. And we emphasize the fact that we want to be the finest looking, not car wash, but the finest looking business in your community. And we will live up to that. As I've told Chris before, hopefully when we get through this process and allowed to do this car wash here, from now on, when new businesses come to town, instead of us using the business that Chris referred to as a building of influence, they refer us to Tidal Wave and say, hey, if you can get it like Tidal Wave and maintain it like they do, we'll certainly support you here in Hilton Head.
Thank you. You brought up a good point. What happens when I've got all my McDonald's trash in my car and I go into that parking lot or into that vacuum? Do you have trash cans in every one of them?
Yes, ma'am. We have trash cans at every.
Are they built in like the vacuum is, or are they rubber cans?
No, ma'am. They're actually they're containers that we put inside. We have these nice trash-looking screenings we call, but they're actually plastic drums, Rubbermaid drums that are inside a housing that make them look more appropriate.
Okay. I really want to commend staff and the client for working together. Staff's comments on that initial week to the client, we got a package that showed the comments that staff made back to you and the changes that you made to apply to staff's comments, and both of you worked together very, very well, and I appreciate all the hard work that both of you put in. I'm wondering, I see that the building is too close to Plaza Drive, but I don't want to see people vacuuming their cars either. So I'm wondering if you can adjust where the, you've got the Bermuda shutters on the side that faces Plaza Drive. Can we, without taking away too much light, just like louver those windows there in the middle? Yes, right there. Can those windows just be louvered all the way down so that light still comes in, but we can break up that huge wall of glass? And of course, it's not up to us to give you design things, but I'm just thinking something else might be able to be done right there in the middle to break it up. I'm not a fan of the glass and the gables as well, but I can let you guys figure out what you're doing. I agree that the arches don't work that well with this building. And I would also like to see something besides the split-faced brick. Let's see, what else do I have here? I'm happy that you've got, that no one's allowed out of their car. I was just worried that people would be walking in front of that space and watching the cars go through, or even slowing down on Plaza Drive to watch the cars go through, or see the different lighting come through. So maybe if you could break down those 3 middle window sections on the west elevation under the gable to kind of just slow it down and stop people from wanting to gaze while they're driving or walking or whatever.
Yes, ma'am. I will certainly take that under advisement, but I will say that due to the standards which we greatly appreciate, because we go above and beyond most municipality standards as far as landscape.
Yes.
I think landscaping and all will certainly. I think some of the concerns about the way the windows are, and again, the split face block, we're certainly open to changing that to the low country style brick. And again, but I think with landscaping and all along Plaza Drive, I think it takes a lot of these concerns away about, we've already gone through and where you see each one of those glazed openings with the malls in it, we wrap those in brick, whereas on our traditional style, it's a metal column there. So, I just wanted the staff and the board to recognize that we have tried to address that to close those glass openings up. But again, those are for natural lighting and for the fact that a lot of people, are not comfortable going through dark tunnels, and this glass gives them the feeling of that more open appearance that, the claustrophobia and the concerns of being trapped in a tunnel. And two, it's a safety feature. If we see issues going on in the tunnel, anywhere through the length of this tunnel, believe me, there's issues at times. I mean, the lady forgets that her dog's in there and he shifts it in gear, and for some reason she panics and he hits the gas. Our attendant can look and see what's going on in the tunnel without actually accessing the tunnel. We can evaluate that situation, and that's a lot of the reason. The glass and everything is for the safety of both the customer and our attendants.
Thank you. That your landscaping comment is what brought up. We've got 2 landscape architects that haven't spoken yet, so we'll look forward to hearing what they have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. And you shouldn't leave McDonald's bags in your car. You should take them out at home. All right, let's hear from our first landscape architect, Mr. McAllister. You're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will start by addressing the site flip comment. I completely understand where staff's coming from and appreciate it. I think it's a valid comment. It does feel like the building's crowding Plaza Drive a little bit. I'm in support of what's proposed. Part of the reason being the specimen tree that's over there and some of the significant trees, I understand. Also kind of concerned about the dumpster location. I'm already a little concerned about where it is now, and flipping it, I think that would be the very first thing you would see coming into Plaza Drive. You would see the dumpster. I'm going to throw a comment out to the applicant, and I completely understand that you've got some challenges with the site being such a long linear site, and you're thinking about traffic flow and what it takes for a dumpster to get around. So it doesn't have to be a condition. I would just appreciate it if you could look for an alternate site for the dumpster. Only reason being is it faces and kind of activates the public. Be great if it could somehow be internal to the site, but again, I understand there's a lot of constraints with the site and it may not work, but if you could just look at it, I would appreciate that. Also, I think Annette brought it up first with the setback encroachment was that the pay kiosk at the bottom? And on my screen, it's hard to tell, but it kind of looked like the prep canopy also just ever so slightly encroached into the setback as well. And hopefully one of our LMO experts on staff can chime in on this, but I know we're trying to protect this specimen tree, and that's important and great, but there is a certain percentage of the drip line you can impact, and I cannot remember if it's 15% or 20%. So I wonder if there's an opportunity to just slide everything, whether it's a foot or what. It could get you out of the setback if you are encroached in your prep canopy, and it could potentially allow for a greater overhang. And to me, that would kind of address staff's comments a little bit. It's certainly not flipping the site, but it does get the building a little bit off of Plaza Drive. So that might be something just to consider, to look into. I'm not asking you to, for sure, just go impact more of the specimen tree, but just pointing out there is a threshold of how much of the canopy you can impact, and maybe there's a little bit of wiggle room. Something to look into.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mackhouse. Again, we'll take that into consideration. I think Brian can answer your question. He has those details of what the encroachment to that drip line is. So when you're done, I think we can answer that for you.
Okay, just kind of point it out, something to look into, and it might give you some wiggle room for allowing for a slightly bigger overhang on the roof. And on that note, I'm a landscape architect, but I did notice the vacuum canopy overhang was not strong at all, so maybe you can look at that as well. But I'll lean on my architectural peers here for that. And just switching gears to the landscape a little bit, since you are so close to the Plaza Drive setback and buffer, I would ask that we use some slightly larger evergreen shrubs in that buffer and along as the foundation for the building. Like there's one little stretch where, for example, we're using liriope. That's a ground cover, so I think we should be looking more at the medium 4 to 5 foot evergreen shrub size. I think that would be appropriate here. And it's pretty typical for us to request that people not use sod in the buffer. So I would ask that you eliminate sod in this, at least this Plaza Drive buffer. And let's just let that be a little more naturalized.
Yes, sir. We've gone through that with staff. I think we've addressed those, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct, Mr. Chris?
I think it was.
I believe all your sod. I believe on the revised landscape plan you removed the sod from the buffer. Yes.
Okay.
And just to note, David, the revised landscape plan came in after the deadline, and it wasn't part of the submission. But
Okay.
they have been working to eliminate that.
Okay, great. Well, thank you again for working with staff on that. Some minor comments, I think staff pointed out to avoid using river rock. I'm really in agreement with all of the staff comments. Only thing I'll go against the grain on is I will support the site plan as it is. Again, just look into if there's an opportunity to shift it over a little bit. And I would also just say verify that we're not encroaching in any of the setbacks. And that is all that I have.
Thank you, David. All right, Mr. Karstens, you're up.
If I've got anything benefit, I've got the benefit of time. So I was actually able to look at your Beaufort location just through the aerials and kind of observe a couple things. Marty, how many folks do you usually service there in Beaufort? Could you tell?
How many customers do we service daily? Is that the question?
Yeah, through the car wash, I would say, just an approximation.
Probably 400 to 500 daily.
Okay, okay. I just wonder because I looked at kind of the configuration of that, and it'll kind of inform some of the things I'm going to remark on the site plan here.
Yes, sir. I will say on that particular one, if you won't hold it against me, the 90-degree turn at the exit of the tunnel, that's another factor in that the ordinance and the codes that do not allow a bay door to be oriented toward, I think it's Sam's Point Boulevard, I'm not mistaken. So that's where we work with staff. You know, staff's like, look, we like y'all's business model. We think you have a wonderful looking business and we'd like to have you here. I don't know how we can accommodate you with your design of building. So we went back, and that's a way that, you know, to express that how much, when we decide that we put a lot of effort into looking into this area, we put a lot of money into this design and this business, and we want to be the finest, nicest looking business in the community, and that's kind of proves our point that we're willing to work with your design ordinances to accommodate everything that we can that's allowed through the constraints of the site.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm going to echo fellow board members when, in regards to the building, I think the size of the overhangs would certainly help, along with, I don't mind the windows and the glazing, but I kind of see more of an opportunity for that water table to be a little more contiguous, especially on that west elevation. I think that will kind of give a grounding to it, along with Mr. McAllister's comments about the evergreen foundation shrubs. I think those are critical along that park plaza. Also, I'll echo David's request that you kind of maybe study the opportunity for another location for the dumpsters. In looking at this, you know, we're realizing that it is the Pizza Hut and the existing car wash site. It is, I mean, it's like 300 feet of kind of property depth along that edge. So that drive and that stacking drive is quite a long run. That being said, I'm in favor of how the site is set up right now. The two specimen trees that we've been concerned about on that lower side, they currently reside adjacent to asphalt parking. So they're kind of encumbered, you could say, currently. Now I know the thought with the LMO and the desire with development is that we limit the impacts and we reduce impacts. With my thoughts that I'm going to present, I'm going to say that there's an existing condition that's happening with some of these specimen trees that we could take advantage of in this shift to the east. So I'm in favor of the configuration, but I'd like to look at like the whole thing shifting east because there's a group of trees on the frontage. Chris, if you hold right here, there's a group of 3 oaks that are just above the specimen on Plaza Drive that currently reside in an island right there. Yeah. These are 3 live oaks that are 14, 16, and 12 or something like that. Unless an arborist says that these are not great, I think that there's an opportunity to keep these with the shift in the building and the plan. I think it'll only help the streetscape in this particular instance, while at the same time maintaining the circulation that y'all are looking at. Since you've made mention, Marty, of the Beaufort plan and how it turns, if this was going to stay the way it is with the exit oriented towards 278, I would seriously consider adding that length to the building for that turn. And really addressing kind of that exit. I think that was done very well in Beaufort. Obviously, it's along a roadway frontage, and I think that this is going to get as much attention because it is this plaza. People coming in and looking straight in. So I would consider looking at using that model here and how it can work with your circulation. I think that, yes, you've got...
Judd, excuse me for a minute. Could you better explain what happened, what the model is in Beaufort to clear that door?
Yeah, so in Beaufort, right now, you're looking at maybe 130 some linear feet of building. In Beaufort, at the exit point, it's almost it's a structure at the end where there's a 90-degree turn to the right for exiting. And then that 90-degree turn to the right, you basically have your exit then is facing away from the roadway. So instead of this bay emptying and looking directly at the road, perpendicular to the roadway, it empties out, and so you actually have a solid wall that is parallel to Sam's Point Road, which is the major road there. The same thing that happens though in Beaufort though is that upon exiting the car wash, you come back down through the middle of all the vacuum aisles, which I think is what's lacking in this plan. This idea of coming to a dead end for all the vacuum stalls is going to create, I think, a little bit of a headache. So my final suggestion to Marty and Brian might be is it possible to, instead of having a clockwise rotation through this site, can you reorient it so it can be counterclockwise? Still accessing off of the lane at the top, but when you access in, you make an immediate right-hand turn. And I know this would probably precipitate in shifting the building toward the south, but circulating in a counterclockwise fashion where you come down Plaza Drive, get into the building, then as you exit, you can exit out and come down the lane of vacuums. So it's almost a rework of Beaufort, you could say, in circulation. And this would help to, eliminate the long lane that is on the eastern side of this site, and it would allow for this whole complex to shift, that 10 or 15 feet that we needed to shift to the east. I know this is a lot of comments. Again, these are observations that I've seen in your Beaufort store and opportunities here that I think could help. Another thing in looking at this is that I think the Plaza Drive frontage, I don't know if there was an opportunity to utilize one of those old curb cuts or a curb cut. You've kind of pigeonhole yourself into just the access points off that frontage road. And this is where maybe the idea of access for a dumpster could be off of the Plaza Drive. It could help alleviate some of the pressure, knowing that, when folks are coming into this, that turn off of 278 and onto Plaza Drive, and then the quick left-hand turn, it can cause some problems. Even the right-hand turn in McDonald's currently sometimes causes problems. And the fact is that you're going to be crossing what I would say is a very short loading area onto 278. And hopefully if 400 to 500 cars try to get in here, this current circulation is going to back up between, a lot of things. And I know you've got plenty of stacking, on site. The problem is going to be getting to that stacking off of Plaza Drive. So as far as Brian, I know there's some logistics and some challenges as far as trying to utilize an access point off of Plaza Drive. I don't know. Also, in looking at this, I think there's a lack of, considering you're going to have canopies over the vacuum areas, I don't know if we're concerned about tree debris and such, but I think the islands in this parking lot, I think they require more than a sago palm or sable palmetto. I think that they're, especially since there's going to be so much roof line, I'd like to see some shapes associated with the islands in the vacuum bays. And my final comment, I think that might have been it. I know I have a lot of comments, and they're very much, some of it was logistic, a lot of it was aesthetic, and the ability to keep certain trees while utilizing some of the existing hardscape, kind of impact areas that are existing. And then just that idea of being able to kind of maybe relook at the site circulation and how that could help eliminate some of the hardscape associated on the project. I'm in favor of this project, obviously, and I'd love to see it happen. But I just, there's just a handful of things. So,
Sir, we appreciate the opportunity and your guidance into making this be a better project. We'll take all that in consideration, and Brian and myself and the other members of the organization will take all these comments, and we'll sit down and try to present this back to staff to see if we can work with Chris and staff to accommodate as many of these as we can.
Thanks, Marty. I appreciate that. I know sometimes for me, these meetings, especially here, I'm as much visual as anything else in trying to describe things. And sometimes I wish I could show you, the doodles or the things I'm trying to kind of, make sense of some things, just because, in my own work, I get pigeonholed into certain things. And when I hear other ideas, it only helps. So, but I appreciate y'all working with us.
Sure, and we thank each one of y'all for allowing us this opportunity.
Mr. Chairman, this is Chris Darnell with the town of Hilton Head. I think both Judd and David had made some interesting points, especially about the encroachment under the trees on the right-hand side of the project, and Judd's suggestion of making it a counterclockwise circulation, and maybe that building moving back, that would address a lot of staff's concerns about the site.
I agree. I think
I think I would like to, this is Marty again with Tidal Wave. The only thing I think, Judd, correct me if I'm wrong, they wanted to take the building, and instead of going through it the flow of clockwise, you just want to reverse it counterclockwise. And I think upon doing that, we enter in at the current access that we have. We'll be going in a cross traffic flow consideration of our exit, or we'd have to reverse the exit and entrance. And at that time, our stacking ability would be significantly cut in half, probably more than half. So I just want to bring that point up, as far as, if we take the building and just kind of flip it over to do counterclockwise, please take in consideration the stacking ability, because the way we currently have it laid out, we have enough room to stack, I don't even know, probably 30 or more cars, roughly, somewhere in that 20 to 30 cars.
Yeah, Marty, and that's why, I looked at the stacking that you had in Buford, and obviously you're accessing off of a back road, a service road there, which helps. I would say here is the building would push away from 278 to the south, and you'd be able to have that stacking more up front on that front corner. And then, hopefully, is like your Buford model, when you exit out of the wash, you come back down an aisle that would go between the vacuums. And so this would eliminate this extra 16-foot lane on the outside of the property. And that, you could either grow the space between your vacuums and your building to kind of give yourself a little more room there, or, you know, it would just, I think you'd still be able to have your vacuums up front in the configuration that you have. It would just be the fact that the building would sit lower on the site. But
Yes, sir. I see exactly what you're saying. And just kind of give you, and with you being a landscape architect, you'll understand this. So if you look at the orientation of those the pay kiosk at the southern portion of the lot, so the distance between those, we need to get a certain amount of cars out of that into the queue to get to that prep canopy. And then from that prep canopy, we have a car. And then from the prep canopy to the tunnel, and the reason this model is set up, we have our minimum distances between those units is for the flow of traffic and the opportunity to create a quicker experience to get more cars through this tunnel, which in turn helps, because a lot of times most cities are worried about stacking do we provide the capability of stacking out into the street. And so this is, we added that prep canopy. We used to do all our prepping under that open area, as I think it was Miss Annette Lippert had asked about. We used to do it all there, and we came to the conclusion that, hey, if we do the majority of the prepping prior to the tunnel, and we got a car that can stack outside of that and then be loaded into the tunnel, it significantly increases our production, which aids in the problem of stacking or cars, overflowing into the roads that access or drives that access our property. So that's kind of the philosophy behind how these are laid out in the distances that we have those spaced apart. So if that helps any with that discussion of the orientation of the building.
That does help, because I think about, we have the car wash, Island Car Wash on the south end. They've got, off of their access lane, they've got a double lane of something like 80 feet that goes to their pay kiosks. And then I did a measurement. They pretty much have 90 feet from there to the access for the wash. And they obviously drop a lane similar to y'all. I would say is that, if the site went to the counterclockwise flow, you could even potentially expand your 2-lane loading, similar to your Beaufort location potentially. But I know that you're trying to get as many people off of the main roads and onto the site so that they can stack in. And in a way, the access lane across the front will help to service that also, especially if that's going to be the primary in and out using that lane. No, the great thing is 400 to 500 cars, especially Hilton Head during the summer. Folks are gonna be looking to get the road mess off of their cars once they get to the island. So I think there's going to be plenty of volume for you.
And this is Brian. Also, having the stacking on that side helps screen that from Plaza Drive too. You don't see just a long line of cars.
Yeah, and I'll just yes, I think that is key too. This long line is probably the opportunity that Mr. McAllister said, as far as being able to get the dumpsters away, and then the idea of a one-way access out on the Park Plaza might help, as far as if we're thinking about the trash vehicle service, or just how the site might circulate it. When I first saw it, I was very concerned, because I felt like everything was constrained to that front access road, and just knowing how bad that light is, it gave me a little consternation to think about all the people making a left onto this access lane, just in general. So that's why I was also trying to throw out the idea of trying to use, the Plaza Drive whenever possible too.
Sure. And thank you again. We'll certainly look at all these opportunities.
Okay, thanks, Judd. Let's see, Ms. Remke.
I've been listening to all this stuff. This has been very enlightening. I do believe that the orientation on the site is correct. We don't want to see those those canopies and vacuuming on Plaza Drive. I like the way the building is oriented. I would like to go back to the drawing L1.0. Okay. Just walk me through this a little bit. When we turn onto the property and we go into the staging lane that's on the right-hand side, on the east side of the building, and we go all the way down and we go through the pay booth and everything and come out through the tunnel. When we get out of the tunnel after the car is washed, then there is no vacuum service. It's strictly self-service vacuuming. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct. It's self-service.
And so they would, coming out of the tunnel, they would make a right and come on down where I see both double lane of traffic. And I'm not really too sure which one of the canopies are the vacuum canopies, but let's say they come all the way down here and they can't find a place to vacuum. They have to make a U-turn and go back up. Is that sufficient? It looks pretty tight in there.
Yes, ma'am, that is correct. I can't see the distance between the face of canopy to the face of canopy. If I'm not mistaken, Brian, is that 28 or 30 feet in there? It's 30 feet between canopy.
So you've got two 15-foot lanes. That's acceptable.
Yes, ma'am.
The other thing is, you pull into the canopy and then you have to back out of the canopy. I'm sorry, the vacuum center. You pull into the vacuum center and then have to back out with all this cross traffic. So there's a lot of, if you're having 400 or 500 cars, you're going to have a lot of cross traffic in there. Have you thought of anything about how you're going to control that traffic in that tight space?
Yes, ma'am. That is the purpose. Most two-way traffic aisles is only 24 feet.
You're correct.
For the safety fact. We've got 30 feet in here, which is 6 additional feet that would help with that. And it's just, it's the same as if you parked at Walmart, except for Walmart or Kroger, anywhere like that. They don't produce the 30-foot aisles. Typically, they're 24-foot aisles. In our parking places, unlike your traditional space parking, 9-foot in width, these are 13-foot in width. So it gives you the opportunity to start doing your turning radius before actually leaving the parking stall. So we're having additional 4 feet wider parking stalls, which aids in that concern of, if we're backing out into traffic, and again, this is, we've put a lot, we've built over 70 of these, and that's why we don't want to reduce that drive aisle any less than 30. We have gone down to 28, but 28 is our minimum width drive aisle just for that very purpose.
Okay, and I agree with that. Where do your employees park?
You see the 2 handicap places at the northern end of the tunnel? Those 3 places there, the opportunities for our employees to park. Yes, ma'am.
And that's all you have are 3 employees on site?
Typically have 3 to 4 employees on site, and they can utilize one of the less desired vacuum stalls. We typically have the vacuum stall that's right there at the very entrance of the tunnel. Is usually our site leader will park in that particular stall.
Okay.
That's at the very entrance of the tunnel. And the purpose for that is we don't really want a customer. We want to be able to provide that for customers' usage, but a lot of times our site leaders will park in that stall. If he has an overflow of attendance, usually there's only 3, sometimes 4 attendants on site at a time.
Okay, all right. And just out of curiosity, this is your prototype building, is that correct? And you say you've built 70 of these?
Yes, ma'am. This is not our typical prototype. We typically we don't have as much brick facade along the western part of the building as you see it. We usually do some accents on the corners of the buildings at the entrance and exits, and then the elongated side is usually metal columns that were not wrapped in the brick veneers or the veneers that we show here. We typically do a blue metal roof. This R panel, not the standing seam as suggested by the staff. So we've significantly changed this building. I say significantly. We have made a lot of changes to this building that is not standard to our prototype.
Okay. There were comments made about all of the glass in the tunnel, and this is where I got my curiosity. if you've had, if your other buildings have all of this glass and you've had a building in service for 3 or 4 years or so, and you're spraying water and then soap suds and then wax through the tunnel, do you experience a buildup on those windows, and do you have a method to keep those clean and sparkly so that in a couple of 3 years we're not going to see cloudiness on those windows?
Yes, ma'am. When the car wash shuts down at night, our attendants we work between an hour to 2 hours after hours, and that is time specifically set up for washing the windows, cleaning of the tunnel, maintenance to the equipment, landscaping, the parking lot detail. We actually, and so you'll know, even when it's raining, a lot of your car washes will shut down for the day. We are open. At our hours of operation, we are open, and we take that opportunity, and weekly, you'll see them pressing the pavement.
Okay. Those are my only comments. Thank you very much. And I'm glad to see this because Pizza Hut has been there way too long.
All right. Thank you, Debbie. All right. Really good discussion, everybody. Probably see, I've been doing this 6 years. This is maybe like the first or second time I did not agree with staff. I think the building is in the right place, taking into account all the comments that have been made about we need to shift it to the east a little bit. I think, I think in general, it's laid out correctly. I don't even know that I would flip it counterclockwise for the reasons that were discussed after Judd made the comment about the length of stacking and where will the cars stack after they pay and all that other good stuff. I think the applicants made, obviously you thought this out and you made some really good rebuttals, I think. So I think if we can just work on a lot of the architectural things that Ms. Lippert pointed out first and everybody else followed up on, is that I think we got a good thing going here. Some of my more specific comments. I also had lots of time, like Mr. Carson said. I pulled up your Beaufort location photo, and you have jack arches there instead of curved arches. So if we could flatten out those arches more like you have on your Beaufort store, I think that would be good to keep a consistent look. On the site planning, once you enter that long, Marty, I guess this is for you. Once you enter that lane and you get in there about 15 or 20 feet, you're committed to a car wash, right? There's nowhere to get out. Can you get out if you made a mistake, if you thought you were going to the bank or McDonald's? Is there an escape route?
This is Brian. I don't know if Marty's had
Okay.
cell issues or not, but that is true. You are committed until the pay kiosk. If you got to the pay kiosk and decided you didn't want to pay, they would ride you through, and there is a no wash lane sitting between right before you enter the tunnel. You'll see that pavement area.
Okay.
And that's where Marty was saying that the site leader likes to park. That's a
gotcha.
no wash lane that you could not go through the tunnel.
All right, gotcha. I totally missed the no wash lane, so that makes sense, because I was wondering if you would need to open up that end of the alley where there's that little green rectangle down there by the pay kiosk at the end of the go up a little bit, up, that thing. But you don't need that connection, and then it would. So never mind. You answered my question on that.
Yes.
The in and out of the vacuums, you explained that there's plenty of room to back in and turn around. Some picky architectural things. The gables, the gable ends are different on the north and the south elevations. Any particular reason? One's got one looks like it's got more of a truss there, and then that one's just a The other one, the north, is just a simple center post.
They're
There's
both
some,
trusses.
okay,
They're both trusses, Mr. Michael. One of them has a glazing truss in the end, which is glass, which gives it the appearance opposite of the south side entry, which is just an open truss, and that is the area that, as Miss Annette mentioned earlier, that is that open air area. It's just an open bay area. That's kind
okay,
of giving the appearance they're different. They're both exactly the same. One's just a
okay,
glazed truss, and one's an open truss.
okay. All right. Let's see. Yeah, I'm totally in favor of doing whatever we need to do to move this thing 12 inches or 2 feet to the right, to the east, so that we can get bigger overhangs. I think that's a must architecturally.
So
And
I have a question for the staff, or for the board and for the staff. Is there an opportunity? We don't want to constrain our drive aisle. Um, to reduce that width of drive aisle, and we'll certainly look into it. But is there an opportunity for an administrative variance of like 5 or 10% that could help us with that if we run into this opportunity that we feel like, hey, this is going to create problems for the experience for the customers? Chris, you may can answer that. Again, we've read through the codes, and we feel like we're pretty close to what the codes have required us to do. And again, this is just design elements that we are willing to meet, but we're hoping that staff or that the community will allow us that opportunity, if need be, to give us that administrative variance. But I don't know that we're going to need it, but just in case, I wanted to ask that question.
As David pointed out, you're allowed 20% encroachment into a specimen tree's canopy, the overhang. He also pointed out, or he or Judd pointed out, that canopy is already impacted by a impervious coverage. So you could actually maintain that impervious coverage to the extent that it is right now under that specimen tree. We don't encourage that, but you could. So
Okay.
I understand from your plan that you only have a little over 10% of the canopy impacted on that specimen tree. So there's room.
Okay. Thank you.
all right, good. All right, I think that solves that one. Judd, you kind of lost me on the right-hand turn coming out. Does that mean you were saying extend the building itself, that extra, whatever, 30 feet, and then make a right-hand turn?
Yeah, no, in the Buford store is like 174 feet long, so it's an extra 40 feet that accommodates that right-hand turn out.
Yeah,
If they were going to keep the building the way it is, I would want to see a lot more kind of screening or landscaping on that corner coming in.
yes,
But
yes.
if they were able to accommodate an architectural feature that would help to terminate the building so that you're not looking at the end of the bay, then that's much more agreeable. It's just
Okay.
everybody made the point, when you come in, turn into this complex down Plaza Drive, you're going to be looking straight down
Yeah.
at that entrance.
Yeah, see where that hand is? Let's close that off with landscaping, like lots of it. And I wouldn't want to extend the building anymore, because then it gets back to the root comment that staff had, that the building's not big, but now you're making it bigger and it's still close to the road. So I would not encourage making this building any bigger, and just really beef up that, from 12 o'clock to 9 o'clock on that corner. Just, as much solid landscaping as we can get there. And plus, I think trying to extend that building and making that building setback curves. If you zoom in, you can see the setback curves, so you wouldn't be able to take that building, but maybe another, maybe 16 or 17 feet. So I would not go that direction. I would try to pick that up on landscaping. I agree. No split face block. Let's go with a local brick appropriate for this area, or something like that. I did not see the color board because it disappeared for a while when I went to see it. So, so I can't comment on the colors, but please, I guess we'll have that for final anyway.
Mr. Chairman, Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman, just to clarify, there was no physical color board for this submittal because it was a conceptual, or it is a conceptual.
Oh, okay. Oh,
You'll
was that a
have the
different
final
project?
one. It was for another project that the color board, it was for Benny Hudson's.
Oh,
that
okay. All right.
appeared.
All right. My bad. So that's irrelevant. Can we go to the street elevation, which I guess is the west? Okay. Agree with Mr. Molesky's comments and Annette's comments about those center three bays. Personally, I would not do that gable at all. I would get rid of that gable right there and just make it a standard bay. Because looking at the plan, all those are like 13-foot 6 bays, like every single one of them until you get to the ends. So you've got these little fatter pilasters that are to the, if I count from the left, 1, 2, 3, like that one. Yeah, that one's fatter, and the one mirroring that is fatter. And to me, it just doesn't need to be there. Those pilasters could be exactly the same as the others. And then those windows could be the same size as the others. I would just make it a repetitive colonnade filled in with glass and get rid of the gable and get rid of the Bahama shutters. I don't think you need them. And then the ends are a little bit different. And then that will uncomplicate the building a little bit. I agree with Miss Lippard's comments on the double up of the shutters on the east side. You got Bahama shutters and fake shutters. I'd just go Bahama shutters on that and, get rid of the ones that are already closed. And on that side, a gable makes sense because that is coming towards you. So I would just get rid of the gable on the west side. Do a simple, even, repetitive colonnade with a nice brick water table, stucco above it, or if we can find some place to get in some siding, great. But it just seems to me siding and car wash may not go together too well, just because of the amount of moisture that's around. But somebody could talk me out of that. But I would just, like I said, I'd simplify the west elevation, draw less attention to it on the roof, do a consistent colonnade, consistent window sizes, change up the materials, get a bigger overhang, and I think you'd be good there. And then that'll, with some landscaping in front of it, hopefully it will be less noticeable because it's a little simpler. But I thought everybody had great comments. So with that said, would anybody like a second turn at this? Ms. Foss.
I would like to just ask the question, what it would feel like if you flipped this exact plan top to bottom, north to south. That would pull that exit arch further away from the entrance and the street, and it might take away some of the traffic complications in and out.
Well, that's what Judd was saying, right, Judd? Where you were?
No, he was leaving it the same.
It's a car wash, a drive-through car wash.
Yeah, no, I think pretty much what Ms. Foss was saying is flipping the plan where, across the middle of it, where you're coming in from the top and going down and, just coming out counterclockwise. But I also was making the point of using the lane between the vacuum stalls as the exit for everything and not having that extra lane. So, but.
Oh, got you. Okay. All right.
My comment is that what if you saw the ticket pay areas up by William Hilton Parkway? that would bring the section of the tunnel down further on that side, so we wouldn't see the exit right off of William Hilton Parkway. And it would
But
make people come down to where that bottom tree is to get in for the drive.
But we don't want people stacking on that outer road. Like if that pay kiosk is 30 feet when you come into the site, you're going to have potential stacking out on the road, which is we don't
They
want.
would have to come down by where the Sam's Club is and enter down there to get into this stacking road. Yeah.
So you want to enter down.
Yeah, down by Sam's. So then we've got all of Plaza Drive to get people into the space.
Ms. Foss, this is Brian. I understand what you're saying. You're saying enter down here at the south end.
Yeah.
You swing around on the east side.
Yep.
And you basically flipping the entrance and exit of the tunnel.
Exactly.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And so there's no connection to the outer road or the service road.
That would be correct. Ms. Foss is talking about exiting, entrance and exit off of Plaza Drive at the southern end.
Judd? David? What do you guys?
So entrance, you would come in and would you come up through the vacuum area and then come in from the top side? Or?
Well, in this particular example, the pay kiosk and the vacuum house down here that's green in the middle would all be put to the north. You know, you'd have to bring the dumpster in the entrances and exits to the Plaza Drive side or here on the southwest.
I mean, I certainly think that, you know, right now, I think if we looked at the aerial, I think there is an access point somewhere in that vicinity for the current car wash. So coming out and then, I certainly like that idea. Yeah, I mean, there's one
right
all
there.
the way down there.
Gets it further away from the stoplight.
It also takes it away from the McDonald's entrance and the lube entrance.
Yeah, that's I make that right heading east on 278 to go to Fiesta Fresh all the time. And that is not a great intersection there because people come through that little alleyway heading, say, towards Sam's from the stoplight. They're moving pretty fast. And for them to quickly make that left turn is a potential, problem. Bender, rear ending.
Yep.
If they have a little more time to go down Plaza Drive and then enter there, I think that's a great point. Unless somebody has a reason that wouldn't work. Ryan or?
Well, I mean, from the traffic flow standpoint, there's more trips being taken to behind us, right? To the Sam's location,
Yeah.
To that spot behind us.
Yeah.
There's less traffic going on the way we have it. That's one of the reasons why we did that was break up your trips within your overall development. So, there was some thinking going on why we chose that location. So,
I would just remind everybody that there's no Sam's at Sam's. There's no Sam's there. I don't know what's going to be there, and it obviously is a big box store, but there's no Sam's there now.
That change, we need to, I think we've kind of hit on all the architectural fine points, so let's just kind of focus our last breath here on this general site planning so we can give them some direction, because we're throwing out a lot of ideas, and it's not up to us to solve it, but we should have some indication of what's going to be workable with the members of the board. You know, like I said, I'm fine with the current planning because I think it gives them their long stacking aisles that they need. The cars that are stacking aren't visible from the street. It is on a secondary street, so it will create less traffic down there. And I'm not as concerned, if we can move the building 2 feet to the right, I'm not as concerned about that building being on Plaza Drive there. So I'm generally okay, but let's kind of see what kind of consensus we can come to. Mr. McAllister.
Yeah, I'll just chime in. I think it's a good late comment. Looking at it on my iPad here, I think the current site plan addresses a lot of site constraints and challenges with stacking and flow. So I'm going to stick to my initial impression and be okay with the site plan. I will still throw out again that if there's anything you can do about the dumpster not activating that public drive, that would be great. But again, I realize it's kind of a challenging site. It's so long and narrow, but I'm okay with how it is and how the traffic circulates.
Okay. And so, Judd, you think Judd, you still think it'd be better to flip it, or it works, or do they need to study getting rid of that third aisle?
I look at, I was more concerned initially in thinking about the exit than a lot of the stacking. I think the stacking is important, and I think they've done everything on site really well. I am just, that lane coming right off of 278 at the beginning of Plaza Drive is just, I just don't know if it's ready for 400 cars trying to make that left-hand turn with the way it's configured right now. That's the only thing that I'm having a little difficulty in. The Pizza Hut, they had multiple access points. They didn't all just turn right away. You could have come in the parking lot, further in the south into that, or even into the car wash. There were access points off of the park Plaza Drive. I'm in favor of the site plan and the circulation and everything. I'm concerned about what's going to happen on Plaza Drive and that access road. And so unfortunately, it's an off-site thing in essence for them, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with stacking. It has to do with access. It's almost like if they try to put a right in, right out off of 278, that would work brilliantly, but they're crossing up some traffic at a light that stacks. So
yeah, that's a good point, because if you are leaving this development and trying to get back onto 278, that's a pretty long light there. I mean, as far as Hilton Head goes, and there's always 4 or 5 cars queued right up there at least, and that queue could easily block that left-hand turn for people who are traveling east on 278. There's a right turn only lane there, right? And then you're traveling east on 278, you turn right, and you want to make that left, but there's going to be a stack of cars trying to get out of the development. I think that's since Ms. Foss brought it up, I think that's a good point. Now, will it happen? I don't know. Hope everybody's a safe driver. But, that's a 45 mile an hour road, 278, and people travel 55 on it. And when they make that right turn and they're coming down there quick and they try to make a quick left-hand turn onto that outer road, but they can't because they're stacking, waiting for the light, I think that could create some problems. So that probably didn't make any sense unless you've driven it, but
yes, sir. I've actually been there. I worked on that on Circle K across the street briefly.
Yeah.
when we were looking at making improvements to Airport Road on the other side, when Circle K was trying to come. But we can definitely look at that queue and, time
Okay.
and see what's going on.
Okay. Well, in interest of moving this forward,
May I ask, sorry to interrupt, but I mean, are there any traffic study requirements with an expected volume of 400 to 500 cars a day that would trigger the need for a traffic study?
This development, to my knowledge, does not trigger the LMO requirement for a traffic study.
Okay, thank you.
And Annette, I think the heartburn that I had was the fact is that before, when it was a restaurant and a car wash, it had like 3 driveways off of Park Drive, or off of Plaza Drive, and now those are being eliminated. So the idea is that all this traffic associated with the site is being concentrated onto this one access road versus being spread out across these other access points. And I think, Catherine made the great point is if we can use, some of, Plaza Drive to alleviate some of this potential backup or access issues, or, just giving people more time to access into the site, still utilizing the same site plan, but maybe you're just reversing the flow on that stacking lane on the outside. So.
Yeah, I agree completely, because I think the bottleneck is before the stacking lane, and so the stacking is going to happen before the bottleneck, which is at that left turn. So I think, and that is what I had understood Judd to say, not having seen the sketch. So when Ms. Foss sort of said it again, I thought that was a similar approach. That's what I was hearing, is coming in at the southern end of the site. So I think the bottleneck is before you get to that access road when you're coming off 278. So I'm definitely in favor of the southern access.
Not ideal, but I'm gonna give.
Okay, Chris,
We can look at that. I mean, I do want to say that per the ITE manual, I mean, we are 39 trips is our peak hourly. So you're talking about 39 vehicles in a peak hour on a busy Saturday. That's coming in and they trickle out depending on how if they want to vacuum their car or not. So,
Chris, what's staff's thoughts on the south entrance?
Staff likes the idea of the south entrance better, and I think it's something that's worthy of a little bit more exploration. We can throw our arms around and talk about it all day, but it might be worth making sure that comes back as an option to look at it. Might consider that.
Okay. All right. So I think we've kind of beaten this one to death. So keep in mind that when this comes back, I probably won't be here anymore, and neither will Miss Rimke. We'll have 2 new people to replace us. So Brian and Marty, I hope you paid extra attention to everybody except me, because they're the ones that are probably going to be looking at this next time. So I would recommend, my recommendation based on everything I've heard is that you withdraw it at this time and come back with additional studies based on the comments that you heard here today. And then I would recommend you show it to Chris and staff to get any hopeful reaction, and then bring it back to the board. So, because by withdrawing, you do not get a denial, because if you get a denial, all kinds of bad things kick in. So I can have Chris briefly. So Chris, would you do that quickly? He has? Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Mr.
Yes.
Darnell's been over that with us, and I think on
Okay.
behalf of the applicant here, we do want to go ahead and withdraw right now, and then we'll
Okay.
resubmit.
All right. All right. Yeah, I think you guys are close. Hit some of the hit the comments that we talked about architecturally, and I think you're good. And then it's really just becomes a site planning issue, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys next time.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Mr.
All right.
Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, board.
All right.
Thank you, staff.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, so let's move on to, oh, that was withdrawn. Next item, new development final. Benny Hudson Seafood, DRB 001319-2021. Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The site is outlined in red on your screen. Squire Pope Road is kind of running diagonally to the right-hand side of your screen. I'm sorry. This is Bermuda Point here, and I don't see Gumtree on here. I'm sorry. It's just off the top of your right-hand side of your screen. Does everybody know where we are? And if not, will you wave your hand? Looks like everybody knows where we are. Okay. The applicant is proposing the redevelopment of Benny Hudson Seafood. The new building will be constructed across the parking lot from the current market in the location of an existing pre-manufactured home, and we'll see that home, which will be demolished as part of the project. Once the new market is built, the old market will be demolished to make room for the required parking lot improvements. The seafood processing and sales building will include conditioned mercantile area plus associated entry and covered porches. A delivery area behind the building will be screened from view by a wooden privacy fence. The parking lot will be improved as necessary to bring the required parking for the market to the LMO standards to include handicap parking. Staff does not think the applicant addressed the following DRB conditions for conceptual approval. One, one of those conditions was, one, select a less reflective color for the roof. Two, consider making the body of the building a shade darker. Three, the proposed lighting plan does not meet the LMO requirements. And four, the tree protection and silt fence does not protect the wetland buffer. For these reasons, staff recommends denial. So we're going to look at the existing area and the architecture. This is the existing dumpster enclosure. There's the driveway to the house. There's the rowing and sailing center pavilion. Hudson's, which is nearby. Carport at Hudson's. This is an example of dockside. A lot of these were pulled as a reference to the roof color. The pavilion at the boathouse, Sunset Pavilion. The Boathouse Restaurant. That's the water side of Docksides. There's the market. This is the house that will be demoed. And you'll see the corner of the house again with those existing oaks that we're trying to protect here. A view out to the dock. View into the site towards the water. This property on Squire Pope. This is more architecture on the building, on the site, neighboring property. So this is a survey of the existing conditions, proposed area for redevelopment and the demolition plan, proposed site plan. So again, the new building sits right in here with the parking lot here. There's the existing residence that will remain and that drive that accesses it. I believe this is that dumpster area that's to remain. We saw a picture of. Grading. Proposed landscape plan with the improvements requested at Conceptual, namely screening here. Roof plan. I'm sorry, that was a building plan. Roof plan. Lighting plan for the interior and porch. Elevations of the building. Sections. Green wall detail. Lighting plan. This is a lighting plan for the fixtures on the building. And I'm sorry, and I must say that after staff noted these, there's discussion with the applicant and the lighting designer to bring those into compliance. Fixtures, fixture colors, string lights, not technically, what am I trying to say? Not technically, they can hang those. Sorry. Cut sheets for fans. Here's your canopy. Canopy color. And color board. This was the color board that was out. It was back or later this week, or well, first of this week. I hope everybody had a chance to see it. And that concludes staff's presentation. I would just like to add, well, with the exception of the body color, I think most of these comments can be addressed, or staff is comfortable addressing them at the staff level if the DRB so chooses. But the issue with the color, the comment or the way staff understood the DRB's comment at Conceptual to make the building darker, and the proposed color did change, but it was not what staff considered a darker color. And that concludes staff's presentation.
All right. Sorry, couldn't find my unmute button. Thanks, Chris. Let's see. Oh, Joe, are you out there? There you are. Would you please identify yourself?
Yes, I am Joe DePaul with PDG Architects, architect for the project.
Okay. Anybody with you today, or just you?
No, just me.
Okay. Would you like to add to Chris's narrative?
Yes. First, just quickly to touch upon the lighting and the wetland protection. As Chris mentioned, we have adjusted our site lighting and building lighting plans to bring them within the LMO. If the DRB so chooses, we'll handle that at a staff level. None of the light fixtures changed locations, but we were able to adjust levels and power of lighting to bring that all within compliance. And we've also adjusted our wetland protection buffer to bring that into compliance as well, and can resubmit that information. Regarding the colors, I have them with me. The board and batten color backdrop we have actually made these colors are significantly darker than the previous submission. Backdrop, which is the board and batten color, has a light reflectance value of 20. It's on a 0 to 100 scale, with 0 being black and 100 being white. So the board and batten sign color backdrop, that's 20. The trim color is 37. And just for kind of a point of comparison, the Lions project, which you all reviewed at the last meeting, which was the color revisions to the blue, their darkest color was 43, and then their trim color was 62. So our trim color is darker even than their darkest siding on there. The backdrop is considered a dark color by Sherwin-Williams, and the trim color at 37 is considered a medium color on their color sample cards. So, we thought those were nice dark colors, and not too dark that they're providing some really harsh contrast to the natural wood tones that we're planning to use, but really set up to complement those well. And the trim color is a really nice complement to the stained wood sample that we have, that thatch color that we proposed. And then just to touch on the galvanized roofing, we think the galvanized roofing is a really appropriate application, considering the maritime surroundings and traditional construction materials along the waterfront of all these other buildings that you saw presented there. The galvanized steel is a weathering material, so the surface dulls over time. Also sitting in the shade of the tree canopy, and those two things together, it soften the look, so it's not this bright, shiny thing that I think everybody kind of has in their mind. This isn't Galvalume roofing. This is the actual galvanized steel, and will weather to that nice dull patina look. And it's really a unifying element of the maritime, architecture along the Skull Creek in particular. All of those buildings along there, the rowing and sailing center, the house that we're tearing down has a galvanized roof. The Hudson's Dockside, Skull Creek Boathouse, a lot of these projects approved in 2013, 2017, and 2019. We think we're kind of relating to that architecture, and think that it's an appropriate use here, especially given the rest of the color palette.
All right, thanks, Joe. It was a good rebuttal. Let's go through, if you hang with us, let's go through the order. We're going to start with wait, are you waving at me?
I was volunteering to go first this time.
Oh, well, Teresa, can I change your order?
Yes, of course, Mr. Chairman. This is your meeting.
Okay. All right. We're just gonna buck the system here, and we're gonna let Judd go first. Sorry,
Okay.
Kathy. Mr. Karstens, you have the floor.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank Joe for modifying the site plan, taking the comments as far as the bike rack and the various plantings and the driveway access to heart. Looking at the site plan itself, I think done a good job of screening the dumpster that's going to stay, and kind of keeping that as back of house. When it comes to the colors, I'm on board. I know we shy away from the galvanized, but to all of his points, especially when I think of Skull Creek and a lot of the lower structures along that waterway, I see that roof feature a lot, especially on the lower profile roof like this. I certainly am on board with the use of it. At first, I wasn't sure about the string lights within the porch, knowing that LMO tries to keep it to dining areas. And so as long as that porch is kind of, it seems as though it'll be kind of a recessed feature within that porch. I'm certainly on board with the string lights in the function that they're going to be on that porch. But other than that, no, I wanted to be quick and out of the way.
All right, and for the record, you were going to be second. So, so now we're going to go back to Ms. Foss. And thank you, Judd. Kathy?
Thank you, Judd. I agree with your comments in complimenting Joe for taking over the comments that we had before. You all know I hate the silver roofs, but this is the first time, Joe, and probably the last time, Joe, you'll ever hear me say I'm okay with it this time. Because you did bring up some really good comments. There's a whole row of houses or buildings over there that have it. So I'm okay with everything. Did I hear that you have already addressed the lighting being over the LMO requirements?
Yes, they're not reflected in the set of plans that we have here, but we have those plans ready.
And you are going to do the tree protection and the buffer is going to be compliant as well?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
Mr. Chairman, if I could interrupt for a minute. Judd brings up a really good point. Is there any dining on that porch where the string lights are?
No, that is not a dining area. The idea for that space is that it's somewhere where when you're shopping with your kids, you got your whole family and it's a smaller market, they can go out on the porch while you shop and not be taking up space.
Okay, like I said, Judd brings up a really good point, and it was a determination by the LMO administrator that those string lights only need to happen where there's dining. And that was, I will call your all's attention, or if you will remember back to the quarter deck discussion. So they need to be only in dining areas.
Okay. So we can remove those and submit the updated lighting plan for staff approval.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Or put a table out there. No, just kidding. Don't get any ideas. All right. And Kathy, you were finished, yes? Okay. Let's see, we already got Judd. Mr. McAllister, you're up.
All right. The only site comment I had, I noticed there's a little bit of grading within the 41-inch live oak strip line. So I would say if you can make an effort to eliminate or reduce the amount of grading in that drip line, I think that would be appropriate. Otherwise, I'll go ahead and comment on the roof. I'm not as sold on the roof as some of the others who have spoken before me. To me, it's as reflective of a roof as we've ever seen when I look at the physical color sample. I wish it was just a little more muted and gray. That being said, I know in your opening comments, Joe, you explained the intent behind it and that it'll weather and patina. Personally, I'm just not confident in what that would look like. So I'm going to go with the rest of the board on this. I'm going to go ahead and say, personally, I think it's too reflective, but I'll also admit I don't know how that material would typically weather, the galvanized steel. So I'm going to lean on some of my other board members, and if they're comfortable with it, then I'll support it. But I'm going to lean on them because I just honestly don't know how it weathers. Because when I look at some of the example photographs of surrounding buildings, and then I look at that material, I mean, I took it out in the sun. It's basically putting a mirror up in the sun, but I understand that you're explaining it's going to weather a little bit. So I'm not as confident about it, but if one of my board members can make me feel better about how it's going to weather, then I'll get on board. That's really all I have. I think you've done a great job addressing comments from the previous meeting, so I'm good with everything else.
All right. Thank you, David. Ms. Remke.
Thank you. I have no additional comments. I'm comfortable with everything.
All right. Thank you, Debbie. Ms. Lippert.
All right, thank you. I think I just wanted to confirm one thing, because when I think the rendering maybe at the conceptual had me back sort of jumbled and backwards. All of the horizontal siding on this is the natural cypress wood, so it will patina to that pretty dark brown. Is that correct?
That's correct. So a good reference building for that is the Woody's Restaurant and Bar in the Promenade in Bluffton.
Okay.
And so all that lap siding will be that material.
Okay, because that makes me feel comfortable with the red on the trim and the windows, as far as, you know, being adjacent to that sort of dark brown wood. But the corner trim, and I may have missed a note, what's the color of the corner trim on the building?
So the corner boards will be the cypress as well.
Okay,
so
good.
those will also weather. And then the board and batten is hardy, so that's painted.
Okay, I think that just wasn't clear to me, so I think it's just important, again, I may have missed a note or something, just to clarify that those corner trim is the same natural cypress wood siding. On the right elevation, there is a sort of faux window, and I couldn't find anything that told me what was actually in place of where there would normally be glass. What is that material?
On the right elevation, so that is framed out of treated lumber. There's a detail for that in the details pages, and it just doesn't have glass panes in it, so it's an open window in the gable end.
Oh, it's open.
Yes. Yeah, so it's framed to give the appearance of a window, but it's open, gives the ventilation. That's built in place. It's not a window. It is a false window. So it's a sash bar with some vertical pieces.
So we have, let's see, we have like a 2 foot by 3 foot opening at the bottom, and then 3 sort of 2 foot by 1 foot openings at the top half.
Correct. So it's framed with a wood sill and then wood jams. It's sort of, it's basically a old school site built window without glazing.
Is there going to be a screen in there, or what's going to prevent animals from just going in there?
Well, I mean, it's an open porch, so there's no screen. It's an open ceiling, so it's,
I see. Okay, just because
so we have an open ceiling in that area.
On that right elevation, I called it a side window, but then countered it, so I was just confused on what was going on.
Okay.
Okay. I'm curious to see if the rest of the board realized that was going to be just 3 pieces of wood in a 3 by 5 foot opening, and just see if anybody else has a comment on that. I guess my other question on the left elevation is, I'm somewhat inclined to not have the service door be red, but I let myself get swayed, I guess, on that. Only because it's different than all the rest of the openings where I understand the red better. Again, I'll let myself get swayed by the rest of the board. I am really pondering this open window for a little bit here. With regard to the roof, to me, what's in really trying to study some of the existing conditions, the crux to me of the matter is that it's indeed the galvanized steel and not a galvalume, because right now a manufacturer has. To me, it appears that the galvalume roofs are much more reflective than a true galvanized steel crimped roof. So because of that, of what's listed on the drawings, I'm on board with the roof. That is all I have, except that I'd like to hear the rest of the board on that 3 pieces of wood in it.
All right. Thank you, Annette. All right, Mr. Molesky, what do you think about the open window above the porch? Plus anything else you have to add?
Sure. No, at first I could understand because it looked like it was part of the interior, but then once you look at it at a different angle, then I can understand what's going on. And I just think that's an interesting way because if there wasn't anything there, again, just my opinion, it would just kind of be a big blank gable. So that kind of breaks it up a little bit. And maybe instead of putting a circular thing, it just kind of more in keeping with the proportions that you see down below on the actual window. So I just see it as just an interesting architectural feature, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. But, I like it. I've never seen that before, but that doesn't mean anything. But I think it's cool. So I would say, fine with that. And overall, I'm obviously a fan of Joe and others at the group there, and always like what you guys present, and this is no exception here. The only question that I have is, and I don't know how much of it's a DRB question, and I brought this up during Conceptual. I'm just kind of confused with the zoning here, with that residential home just to the one side, and then the commercial property here, and not really seeing any delineation of a property line or anything. How's all that working out? Or is there something I don't know about?
Within the property itself?
Well, I mean, that residential property, because the main question has to do with, okay, there's that driveway that's within the gate. So you go through this gate that gets closed after hours, and you make a right and you go down somebody's driveway that's the property owners, and on the left is commercial, and I don't see anything on the site plan that shows the delineation between the residential property and the commercial property. It's just like, hey, we have all this land, and our house is here, and we're selling fish over here, and
that is exactly how it works. That's how it has worked. It's a generational business. The Hudsons own the house and the market. And it's covered in the restrictive covenants for the lot that there can be a mix of commercial and residential uses on the property.
Yeah, so that I was just curious. That seemed kind of atypical. Then my only other comment is there any merit? And I know what the answer is going to be, but I would think that gate is kind of almost serving 2 purposes. At first, to me, whenever I go to Hudson's, the gates always lets me know, hey, Hudson's is closed, so the gate's closed. And I would almost think that gate would be on the other side of where the residential driveway is. But in this particular instance, the gate both is a point of egress both for the driveway and for the business, apparently.
Yeah, so my understanding is, since Barbara and Tanya own both, it's not an issue for them. As an existing gate, though, we're not doing anything with it. It's just existing to remain. So.
Okay, but I guess back to what's relevant here. I'm okay with the roof. I'm okay with the fake open window and all the colors and everything else. Looks great. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, John. All right. Yeah, Joe, I think it looks great. I think you presented it really well. I have no comments. If you got Miss Foss to agree to a silver roof, then who am I to a galvanized roof, and who am I to rebut that? So looks like you got enough support to, and my dog likes it too. You got enough support to get your color palette passed. So I think the open window above the porch, it's kind of quirky. I think it's a kind of a quirky building. It looks like an old riverfront building. You know, I don't really, I don't have anything negative to say about it. So I think you're probably good with that. Anybody have any problem with the open framed window above the porch? All right. Okay. All right. So it looks like you're good. Anybody need a second, or can I make a motion? All right, I'll go ahead and make a motion then. For Benny Hudson Seafood DRB 001319-2021, motion for approval with the following conditions. The site lighting and the building lighting should be adjusted to meet all LMO requirements and should be submitted for staff level review. Verify all tree protections are in place. Again, staff level review. Remove the string lights, and if there is a substitution, submit it for staff level review. Make a note that the corner trim is the natural cypress to match the general lap siding. And other than that, those are the conditions. Any discussion on the motion? Do we have a discussion or a second? Ms. Foss? You're muted, Kathy.
Sorry. Did you address David's grading issue?
Oh, no, good one. Sorry, David, I did write that down. Oh, yeah, there it is. Amend the motion to include grading within the drip line of the 40-inch live oak should be reduced or eliminated. Again, for staff review, to be reviewed by staff.
Sorry, that was a 41-inch live oak.
Oh, sorry, it grew. 41-inch live oak. Let me rephrase that. Grading within the drip line of the 41-inch live oak should be reduced or eliminated and should be reviewed and approved at staff level. Any further additions, subtractions, discussions? All right. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second from Ms. Foss. So, Teresa, would you run roll, please?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Lippert?
Yes.
Mr. McAllister?
Yes.
Ms. Remke?
I'm sorry. I'm fine with this. Am I voting yes? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Molesky?
Yes.
Okay, I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Mr. Carstens?
Yes.
Ms. Foss?
Yes.
Mr. Gentman?
Yes, passes unanimously. Thanks, Joe. Great project. Look forward to see you on the next one.
Great, thank you.
All right, thanks. Moving on to signage, Chow Daddies, DRB 001325-2021. And for this one, we'll turn it over to Shay.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. This is Shay Farrar for the record with Community Development. Today I'm presenting to you.
Hi, Shay.
Hey. Today I'm presenting to you DRB 1325-2021. This is a sign application from Sign Design for a new monument replacing an existing monument for Chow Daddies. The location of the monument is on the corner of Executive Park Road and Pope Avenue across from Wheels. Is everyone familiar with that location? Okay. The proposal is for a new sign that will replace the existing sign. The location was previously approved as a part of a regime, so that is still in place and allows for a common element on that corner for the properties and the tenants. So they will be adding 2 new tenant panels to this sign, and enlarging it will allow for that. The new sign panel will be located between 2 new stucco columns. The sign face will be made of reclaimed wood and mounted between 2 columns using stringers and brackets, similar to the existing sign. There will be a wood lattice feature across the top. The sign letters will be a combination of the existing PVC letters that will be reused, new PVC letters that will be added for the Chow Daddies element, and then the new tenant panels will be routed HDU with a wood grain texture. The applicant has requested to use the existing plantings around the sign. Staff thinks that we can work together to adjust the planting plan to accommodate for the increased width of the sign and to soften the increase in the height of the sign. Staff is recommending approval with the condition that a landscape plan be developed and included in the sign permit approval. So this here is the sign specification, and this is an existing picture of the existing location with the new sign overlaid, and that concludes staff's presentation.
All right, thank you, Shay. Is the applicant present?
Yes, Sean Congleton here with Sign Design.
Welcome, Sean. Would you like to add to Shay's narrative?
Sure. As you know from the site, we're the owner of the property, Price Beal, was looking to get something more in scale to his neighbor Steamers. His sign is basically just mimicking that sign type. The design itself hasn't changed that much. The reason for the additional tenants is there's some office space that was not rented prior. I think he actually donated it to a family for Wi-Fi use over last COVID year to get their schooling done. So after the end of this year, he's going to go back to having that space occupied. So those tenants would want to be representative as they're on that same parcel. Again, the design is in keeping with the current design, with the only addition of the tacos, burgers, and bar. We moved the address panel to the top where it is at the bottom on the old sign, just for the fire department to make sure the plantings don't get it. And Price has also agreed to update the landscape plan. There was 2 plants that I think that Shay and Mr. Beal and myself agree that we should remove. I don't know what they're called, but they had spikes on them, and we thought they were a little too close to the bike path. So they're there. They look really pretty, but we thought we'd replace those, and we will work through with staff on that to get that taken care of. And that's all that I have in short. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to address those as they come by.
All right. Thank you, Sean. All right. Let's run down the list here. Mr. McAllister.
All right. I think it looks nice. I don't have really any major comments. The only thing I'm concerned about is the Navajo white text. If it needs to be a little more off-white, that I kind of feel like it does, but I'll see what the other board members have to say. Otherwise, I think it looks nice.
Shay, what's the is there precedent for Navajo white?
Yes, sir. Actually, I don't believe that the rendering accurately portrays Navajo white. Navajo white is actually the standard replacement that we request for white in general. So it is more of an off-white. Okay. And it would definitely be more off-white than the current letters that are on the sign.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. My kitchen cabinets are Navajo white, and they're not that white. So just wanted to
feel better then. So I'm good with it.
All right. Thank you, Shay, and thank you, David. Ms. Remke?
I have no further comments. I think this is fine.
All right. Thank you, Debbie. Mr. Karstens?
I think it's great. Obviously, it's a much bigger sign than what is there now. So I want care to be taken with the landscape plan, especially since it's getting closer to the pathway. It might be a little more involved than what they think. But also, if they're going to have any site lighting associated with this, making sure it falls within the LMO guidelines, and that hopefully source will be obscured from the folks on the bike path and from the roadway. So, but I'm on board with the design and the layout. Again, just the landscape plan will help to reduce some of the scale, considering it is, you can see, it's the right of way isn't that big on Pope Avenue in that area. And so just being cognizant of that, and then the bike path.
Sean, is there uplighting on the sign?
There is not any proposed at this time, and there's not any, or Shay, remind me, was there lighting there now? I don't have it in my scope, so I'm sorry if I.
Okay. Well, if it's there, then it could obviously be grandfathered in, but just trying to see.
We're not making any, there is no lighting in our scope at this point.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Ms. Foss. Oh, thank you, Judd. Ms. Foss.
Thanks. I think it looks nice. The only thing I noted is that you state the tenant signs are going to be screwed to the sign face, and I would really like to see that be a concealed cleat mount. And Judd brings up a good point about the landscaping. It maybe needs to be more than just using existing, and care needs to be taken to that. Thank you.
John, any problem with turning those into cleats? I think Sean's frozen. Sean, are you there still? Oh, we'll circle back to that question. I think Sean might have. Can anybody else see Sean? No. Okay. All right. When he's back on.
It says he has a bad network connection.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, when he's back on, we'll ask him about the cleats. Mr. Molesky?
And the sign looks great. Again, my only concern, it looks like the existing sign might have been more or less 4 foot tall, and now this one is 8 foot tall. And I don't know, traffic coming down the road, is that going to, they're making a right-hand turn just past there? Is it going to make it hard for them to see bikers? Who's here to answer that? But as far as the design of the sign, it looks great. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. Ms. Lippert?
I think, generally speaking, the sign looks good. If we could just go back to that sign type, though, just because I saw something about, since we've already addressed the white question, if I could just get clarification where the black is.
It appears that it's on that top lattice piece from what I'm zooming in on.
Black fox, and maybe that's not as black as I think, but I couldn't quite tell where that is.
Yeah, it says the topper and the tenant panels are.
If I could.
Go ahead, Shay.
Black fox is more of a gray than a black.
Okay, perfect. Then I'm good to go. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, I think it looks great. It's within the 8 foot tall, which is usually my boundary for a sign. I don't think any sign on Hilton should be taller than 8 feet. But I think it's proportioned nicely, and it works for me, so I don't really have any comments. So, Chris, we can approve. We can do our motion without the applicant present, right? Nothing.
Yes, sir. There's no requirement that they be present.
Okay. All right. So I'll go ahead and make a motion regarding Chow Daddy's DRB 001325-2021 signage approval with the following conditions. A landscape plan should be developed and included in the sign permit approval. Landscape plan to be approved by staff. Extra care and additional landscape should be included due to the increased size of the signage. And again, that approval is at staff's discretion. And the tenant sign panels should be concealed cleat mounted instead of exposed fasteners or screws. Any further discussion, additions, subtractions? All right. Do we have a second?
A second.
We have a second from Ms. Foss. Teresa, would you run roll, please?
Yes, sir. Ms. Lippert?
Yes.
Mr. McAllister?
Yes.
Ms. Remke?
Yes.
Mr. Molesky?
Yes.
Mr. Karstens?
Bless you. Yes.
Ms. Foss?
No.
Yes.
Mr. Gentleman?
Yes. Passes unanimously. And if Sharon, if you're out there, thank you. And thank you, Shay. All right, let's move on to board business. Do we have any? We have none. So looks like next meeting we will. What do we do next meeting, Chris? Do we nominate? We have to reinstate Teresa, I know, but we also nominate next year's board executive members. Is that
Yes,
correct?
sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Chairperson and vice chairperson.
All right. So, so everybody come with your campaign stickers next time.
I have a question for Chris.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Whatever that shopping center is it North Ridge, North Point, where we've tried repeatedly to help them? Why are the orange silt fences around all the trees?
They had gotten a minor DRB approval for some modifications to the site, mostly just resurfacing the asphalt. That required them to put up, there was a requirement to put up tree protection fence to make sure that, you know, the asphalt machine or any other kind of graders or anything didn't park close to the trees in an effort to protect them. We didn't want to compact soil around it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. So staff report. Chris?
Yes, sir. Minor DRB approvals since our last meeting. One, Coggins Point Road was the approval of a fence. 807 William Hilton Parkway, which is the Seagrass restaurant, an awning was approved. And 5, Augusta Lane was a cell tower upgrade. And that's it.
That's it. All right. Any last words, anyone? All right. With
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. Please remember to do your training and turn in your approvals or your sheets to Teresa as soon as possible. The deadline is it June? June 30th.
All right. All right, then. Here we go. With no other business before the board, the meeting is adjourned. See you, everybody.